What is up, everybody, and welcome back to the Triple H podcast. Happy Hour Hoops NBA talk with me and Jake today. It's the OG crew today,
Hey,
Steve.
if you want to dual screen it, Steve, you can hear him talk. He's been talking for like 7 hours now, but over on Twitch.
Yeah.
And I'll give him his plug there. But yes, we're back old school today.
Old school stream for Happy Hour Hoops. Just
Isn't
me
that
and Jake
crazy,
today.
Dunny? We could say old school. This is almost 3 years old. We are
I
3 months
know.
away.
It's crazy.
A little
Man.
more than 3 months away from Happy Hour Hoops being 3 years old. And where has the time gone? It has not felt like 3 years. That is for sure.
We started as a bubble podcast, and now we live in the Dylan Brooks era. the Dylan Brooks era of the NBA.
And somehow
Because
we
that's the
managed
thing.
to talk about. We're still again today going to talk about the Brooklyn Nets and their drama. Somehow,
Yeah.
some way, it started that way. This is basically a Brooklyn Nets podcast. That's essentially what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, man, we've been all over the map, and we're here today. We got some news and notes that we'll jump into in a little bit. Jaylen Brown, the Jaylen Brown article over at the Ringer that has been just taking the Twitter world, Celtics Twitter, NBA world by storm the last couple of days. We're gonna break it down because I don't think the Celtics drama pieces that are in it are all that as what they seem. And then there's just a whole bunch of good, bulky, interesting stuff in there. You said it, Jake. It was a great read. A lot of different interesting things to touch on there. Jaylen Brown's, one of the more polarizing players in the NBA. So we'll get into that. We have Happy Hour Hoops MVP rankings. We're going to talk about the MVP because it's about that time and everyone loves to argue about it. And then a little March Madness look ahead and talk about the tournament so far. And then, the Sweet 16 coming up.
Hell yeah, man.
Start with the news and notes, though, as always. Paul George, man, this sucks, bro. We try to get the bad news out of the way. Paul George sprained his knee last night. He's out at least 2 to 3 weeks, so he's missing the remainder of the regular season, and then will be reevaluated. He may miss some playoff time. Hopefully not the entire playoffs, because I think that would be very detrimental to the Clippers' run. But yeah, I mean, he even he banged a nasty 360 dunk in game on the baseline. Wasn't even a fast break and half court offense. I mean, that alone, we're gonna miss having Paul George on the court for stuff like that. But what do you think this does for the Clippers, man? This is tough. I hated seeing this today.
Well, why the Clippers? They haven't been healthy like ever. Since the team has been incepted, they've never been healthy together, or not the key guys when they needed it to be, right? Like it was Kawhi in the playoffs, it was PG. It's just like it's just shit luck, and this is like I don't know what else it can really be besides that. Maybe a proponent that you should play more games and not play games because you keep getting hurt regardless. Like I don't know what else it is. Like that because they are one of the only teams in the league that perpetually the last 3 years, like right when it shouldn't happen, the injury bug hits, or when it like right at the worst time. I mean, like never, it always is going to hit, but for it to keep happening. And I feel like this was an issue with them even back in the day with CP and Blake and DeAndre. Like one of those guys was always hurt or something was always like off. Like one of the, like, I don't know, man. It's just weird that it keeps happening. It's very, very shitty for Paul George. Because you say 2 to 3 weeks with a sprained knee, like, yeah, like he'll probably try to be back in 2 to 3 weeks because that timeline lines up with the beginning of the playoffs, but he's not going to be the same guy. We know how these knee sprains work. Like Kevin Durant took, how long did he just take? And I know it's not the same grade, but how long? It was like good 8 weeks, right? Like before Durant.
Yeah.
So I don't realistically expect him to be like back to 100% right away. And you look at them right now, they're 5th right now, right? Still playing the Suns potentially. And I mean, the West, you could be 5th, you could be 12th. It doesn't matter. It just depends on what day of the week it is right now. But it's really tough to be looking in that series where do you think that they can beat the Suns without or with a hampered Paul George if KD's back and looks good? Even without KD, I don't know if they can beat the Suns still. I think they could probably, but with KD, I don't know if that's possible.
Yeah, with KD, I don't think they have a chance if they don't have PG. Well, I mean, I shouldn't say I don't think they have a chance. They always have a chance, and then it's tough to count out this Clipper squad just because of the mini run they had when it was just Terrence Mann, Reggie Jackson, and company a few years back in the playoffs. You know, they were still able to make a little bit of noise without Kawhi Leonard, and without without PG, and they're still able to make a little bit of noise. And then you got to trust Ty Lue as a head coach. So if they do have Westbrook, you know, they brought in Bones Highland. Terrence Mann is still around, who was on that team that was able to make noise with not a lot of other guys around him. But yeah, I mean, if it's a fully healthy Suns team, KD's there, I don't think they fare well. Another worrisome thing is that, you know, you say they're the 5th seed, but the Warriors are a game back. And you know, we've been saying it all year. The Warriors don't look like the Warriors, but here they are, just slowly climbing up the standings because the West is an absolute mess. And now Paul George is injured. You only are a game up on the Warriors. The Warriors could easily jump on this opportunity, take the 5 seed, and then, you know, things could just look a lot worse. Imagine, like, then they could end up having to play the Sacramento Kings. And I don't think any one of these teams that's
no, you hear the West is gunning for the Kings. Apparently, that's what the rumor is.
I don't think that's the right move, man.
No, it's not the right move, but that's what they're all these West teams down that are low. That's the vibe. Apparently, that's what I've heard on some pods and everything, is that they're all gunning, hoping to get the 7 to take on the Kings, or hope that the Kings end up in the 3 and you take them on the 6. And it's like, in theory, I kind of get it, I guess, but like, they don't. I mean, the Kings don't play no defense, so we don't know what that's going to look like in the playoffs. But I wouldn't want to take a chance going into that. You know how crazy Sacramento is going to be if you have to say get to a game, just game 7 in Sacramento. That place is going to be insane, no matter who you are coming into there. And if it's like the Warriors coming in there or something too, like, whew, I don't know.
Yeah.
I can't wait. How much can you not wait for the West playoffs? Like, the East is going to be stressful for you and I. So I'm kind of looking forward to the West, and also just for the fact that it's going to be so chaotic, I guess.
Yeah, man, it's going to be crazy. I can't prescribe to or subscribe to the notion that people want to play the Kings. Like, I watched them up close and personal last night, and just the weapons they have, and Sabonis and Fox, the shooters. Like you mentioned, just playing in that arena with these maniac fans who haven't seen a good team in like 30 years almost.
Yeah.
And here they are with this absolute squad making some noise.
Your boys handled them last night, though. That was impressive.
Yeah,
that had to feel good, just because of like the stretch has been lately. Just like, finally, guys, like, just let
to end the road trip like that too.
Yes, exactly.
To stop the beam. They were on a back-to-back.
I know, but to not fade out on a road trip like that.
Right.
Like, that's when you would be worried if they like tail off at the end, coming out strong. I know they're on a back-to-back, but they shut that shit down. Like, that game, it was close, and then the third quarter start, and I didn't turn on the third. I was late. I was watching something else because I just turned it off, whatever. I turned it back on. I was like, oh, this game's about to be done. Like, I really don't even need to watch anymore.
And they've been blowing leads lately, but they didn't last
exactly.
Night, so
that
was good.
Yeah, that's what.
I like how we start with a Paul George leg injury, and then it just turns us into.
Well, that's what we got to do, you know.
Yeah.
Can we? All right, so let's talk about let's get to the next part. Ja Morant is back tonight.
Yes.
Memphis Grizzlies. And I don't know. What do you expect? Like, what do you expect? I don't know. I feel like he's just gonna be normal. Like, he's gonna just have a normal Ja night, and we're all just gonna kind of try to start talking basketball about it. And I'm fine with it at this point, I guess. Like, I mean, I don't know what to think about Ja at this point. Like, it's all just been so weird. Everything about. Did you watch the whole Jaylen interview? Or did you watch any snippets of it at least?
Of the Jaylen?
Yeah.
No, I didn't. I just read the article.
I mean, it was just, as the PR professional myself, I literally just watching this and being like, Ja is just speaking like the little bullets that the comms person put on the piece of paper for him to read for the last 2 nights. Like it was one of those things. And so for that reason, it just makes me like not more skeptical, but that what I know that was an opportunity for you to just be open. And it was all just like PR. It was like the Grizzlies just told Ja, like, you have to go out here and do this interview with Jaylen Rose. Here's what you're going to say. What just happened?
Ja, breaking news. Ja will come off the bench tonight.
Okay. I was going to mention that too, because Taylor Jenkins said Ja might come off the bench. So there it is.
Oh, okay. I hadn't heard that.
Yeah, he said that yesterday. But I don't like what, just because he hasn't played in a couple weeks, they want the conditioning back. Like, is that the idea? I guess to just stop doing basketball stuff for 5 days in the middle of the season is you're probably going to be pretty shook your first time back on the court.
Yeah, and it's funny because remember when he went to that like facility or whatever in Florida to get his mind right or whatever. I forget the exact verbiage.
To learn how to handle stress better. That was that, and that's the thing. That's the thing is like is that a good answer? Or are we just being nice to the guy, trying to give him a break?
Yeah.
That's not a great answer to me, to be honest. We buried Ben Simmons for people buried him. They tried to walk toes around it, and then they were all like, what is going on? Like, we know there's just something else going on with this dude. And then John Morant just says he needs to handle stress better and he's gonna hop on the court. I don't think so. And I'm not saying he's not saying he did anything wrong, but it's just like we have to be the same. We have to be the same across the board in these situations. If we're going to give one person can handle stress and go, to Florida for 3 days. But yeah, Ben Simmons took this a obvious, very high step further. So they shouldn't be compared, but I just want to be careful about how we talk about these things.
Yeah. And it's interesting too, because I hadn't thought about this, but I heard the same thing about Kyrie Irving today. It's like Kyrie damn near got like, he was getting beat up and battered on social media for nearly 2 months after, and obviously it's a touchy subject, sharing the Amazon link to the movie that had the anti-Semitic stuff in it. Obviously, it's something that needs to be addressed, much like the Ja thing, but people were saying like Ja just, he seems to kind of be getting off easy. And here's a guy who brought a gun that wasn't his into a strip club and was flashing it on social media, where all Kyrie Irving did was share a link. And, he said, he apparently, like, he didn't think about what his actions. Neither of them did.
Neither of them did. But how did we get to one place so quickly? But we've gotten to another place so quickly. Yeah.
And Kyrie lost his shoe deal. Ja kept his. Like, it's just, and like you said, you made me think of it with the Ben Simmons thing. It's just the inconsistency is bizarre with these types of things.
That's honestly, like, you're bringing up Kyrie, like, we have more to skip. We have more to talk about here, but it ties into all the Jaylen Brown stuff too. And like the more of the stuff that I took, like, you and Celtics fans rightfully are probably looking at it through a Celtics lens. A lot of the stuff that he's been talking about, and it's not even just the Ringer article. And New York Times article this week too was pretty poignant, and that was more stuff about just being in Boston and everything else, and not stuff he hasn't really talked about before. But just again, PR world, there's a reason that you decide to do 2 articles like this and have them come out in the same week. Like, he's clearly like trying to get his message out there right now in a very pointed way for whatever that reason is. If it's just to speak his mind, because he's been talked about a lot. And I think that's the biggest takeaway. I'm just jumping into that at this point. That's the biggest thing is I took away from it is he's been talked about from an outside perspective, from like, being in trade rumors and being second fiddle to Tatum and all this since he literally stepped on the court. And this is a dude who it's not like, I feel like Jaylen Brown gets talked about like sometimes like he's like a second round pick that was like a diamond in the rough that, oh my gosh, he was really good. And he was a number 4 pick, like right 4 or 3 pick, number 3 pick. Like he was like, this is a guy that was like, you could be a superstar in the league from day one and then has done all the right things. And I don't understand why he's still talked about like he's like this up and comer like grinder. Like it's just like a weird like narrative that got put on him, and I think it has something to do with like him being the guy that got thrown into the, like, when you talk about all the trade rumors, how real or not you think they are, whether it's AD, Kawhi, Paul George, why am I blanking on Durant, all these guys. what is one thing that has been consistent the last 5 years is Jaylen Brown has been mentioned in a trade, whether it's by the Celtics or not. There's always been a package from the Celtics that centered around Jaylen Brown. Like that, we could have just scheduled that tweet, right? I can't imagine what kind of toll that takes on any player. But then you just like all the extra context that this great article by Logan Murdoch and honestly the piece in the New York Times too, like gives to Jaylen Brown, like the person. I think that's what really like it explains a lot to how the Celtics are kind of in the spot they are in and how he is kind of in the spot he's in his career right now. But I want to hear from you with your inside perspective of being a guy that's like obviously followed him very, very closely since day one, since draft night.
Yeah, I mean, I have so much to say pretty much about everything, every single like different section of that Ringer article. But just speaking to what you said, me and Brett, who's mine and Jake's mutual friend, who we bring up a good amount on the podcast. But we were talking about it the other day, and it's funny you mentioned that people kind of treat him as if like he's this diamond in the rough and wasn't the third overall pick. Like me and Brett were talking about that. Like Jaylen has done everything right from the second he came into this league. He was a guy who really couldn't shoot. He just had raw athleticism, couldn't dribble, and now he's one of the best two-way players in the game, arguably the best player in that draft now. And that, like, it wasn't a very deep draft, but the first 10 or so picks were pretty solid, man. I mean, we're talking Sabonis, Jaylen Brown, Brandon Ingram,
Murray,
Ben Simmons. Yeah, DeJounte Murray, Ben Simmons, Pascal Siakam, Malcolm Brogdon.
Ingram.
Yeah, BI. Like,
I mean, really, like the only reason he's 3 is because it's Simmons and Ingram who are just 6'11" freaks of nature coming out that year. That he and in that way he kind of is the diamond in the rough, right? Because it's Duke. And it's Ben Simmons from Australia, who we've heard about since he was 15. And then it's, Jaylen Brown, whatever. But I digress.
Yeah, and it's just he talked about it in one of the answers in the article, too. Like it was frustrating for him early in his career because, here he is with Kyrie Irving as a teammate. They bring in Gordon Hayward. Marcus Morris Sr. was on that team. Al Horford was on that team. Marcus Smart was kind of on him. Anytime he made a mistake and he was like, wow, I see, Simmons doing his thing in Philly because they didn't really have much of a team outside him and Embiid at that point. And then Brandon Ingram in LA, like spotlight, he's playing in Showtime. He's able to showcase his skills, and they didn't really have much of a squad at the time. And here's JB coming off the bench thinking like he has a lot more to give, but he doesn't know if he'll get a shot. And obviously he eventually did. And I just think people almost don't appreciate enough like how much he actually grinded to get to where he is today. And he says it about himself, I say it, and I think it's absolutely true that he's one of the best two-way players that the NBA has to offer right now. And it's just it's kind of crazy that I feel like he almost still doesn't get that respect, and people still don't acknowledge kind of the climb he's had in his young career.
I mean, both of them. No one gives enough credit to both of them, and you can't separate them at this point, regardless of what happens the rest of their career. But no one gives enough credit to both Jason and Jaylen for being in the position that they were in so young in their career and not blowing up yet. Like every other, how many other scenarios does this blow up and the other star gets traded? And I think, you want to give some credit to the Celtics organization, fine. I don't, because Jaylen basically tells us not to. He's in this article. He's like, it's not like a glowing portrayal of his relationship with the front office and everything else. And I do think that there is something to Brad Stevens getting moved into that role. And maybe that's part of the reason that ended up happening in the first place is a guy like Jaylen and just the superstars of today in general. Maybe they thought that they needed someone who could, relate more. Logan Murdoch was on Bill Simmons today talking about this article too. And I think one of the things that he noted about it is like, right now the Celtics have a big opportunity right now with whatever happens with Jaylen, because right now they're looked at still like with the Isaiah Thomas thing and that kind of thing, and now whatever's happening here with Jaylen, like if they take care of him, it looks better to like the rest of the players in the league, free agency wise, everything else. If it goes bad though, like it's just like, how did we end up in a point where we're even talking about this? And I don't know if it's as much just because Jaylen is just, that's what I'm struggling with, Donnie. Like, is it just like Jaylen is just this kind of free thinker and just like has, there's obviously he's talks about his trust issues and everything else, and maybe this was inevitable at some point, or have there been missteps that like we kind of brushed over just because they were very good at basketball and covered up a lot of those missteps for a long time?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of a lot of different things. I think the part of it is the beginning part of the article where he talks about, he and it's slipping my mind to the professor he became friends with.
I got you, yeah.
He said, he wanted to be known for more than just an athlete, and that was important to him.
Which I feel that. Like,
yeah.
I like legitimately have, as a former, both of us, both playing sports, growing up, everything, I've legitimately had those conversations with people close to me, like about those things, and just like wondering where your place is growing up and everything else. And that's just real. Yeah. Like when I saw that, it was just like, that's real as fuck. Like, and it's not, and a lot of people won't admit that. Like just the fact that he's admitting that to anybody, and especially at that time in your life, like that tells a lot about you.
Yeah, and I think obviously that, that conversation with his professor at the school had a lot of, it impacted him a lot and kind of helped form who he is as a person today. And I think that's what goes into what's happening right now. Like I think that coincides with the part about him talking about how, at the end of the day, the NBA is a business, but where he was from, like people are being real with you when they come through your front door. And it seems like people, when you have these business decisions in the NBA and with your organization, it seems like they're coming through the back door and kind of saying one thing to your face, but maybe saying one thing behind your back.
Yeah.
So I think his, struggles or maybe trust issues with the organization might just be he's feeling a little bit like, when he's on a pedestal like this and he's the one being talked about, he feels less like a person in these moments and more just like an athlete, which is the whole thing he was trying to avoid. Now I don't think that's all of it, and I'm purely speculating. I'm just saying how I see it. But I also, and this is not just with the Celtics, this is every team, every sport, but just the toxic shit that's all over social media, man. Like these guys Google their name or Twitter search their name after games or after trade rumors. And, that can take a toll. Like it's probably tough. I'm sure you see much more negative when you are the actual athlete than you do positive about these things. So I think that goes into it. And I think just him having a decision and kind of realizing how much better he got since he was a rookie and how much money could possibly be on the table.
So I wanted to bring that up because do you know how much money it actually is on the table? Like the actual dollar amount. If he makes all NBA third team this year, the Celtics can give him 5 years, $290. Yes. That's the extension. They can't give him that extension if he doesn't make all NBA. Otherwise,
I think he will too.
He should. But otherwise, if he hits free agency, then any other team can pay him more than the Celtics just because of the way extensions work, because he didn't have the max before. So he can only get that super max extension if he makes all NBA. So in a weird way, it's all on his shoulders at this point too. Yeah. To literally like play well to then allow the Celtics to even can be able to give him this money if he, whatever he wants to do too. Like, but it's just a crazy scenario too, because they got him on a discount before, but that's kind of how it comes back around the other way too.
Yeah. And I do think though. I think they'll give him, if not the whole 290, I think they'll give him something real close to that, and I hope that's enough to get him to stay. If they don't give him the 290, but someone else is willing to, I think he likes, if not the city of Boston, I think, the team and realizing what he's built and realizing that his opportunity to win a championship might not be as strong right away anywhere else than where it is right now.
Yeah.
But I think especially if Brad Stevens is in the position he's in right now, I think, there's no one really higher on Jaylen Brown than Brad Stevens.
All I'm saying is if Rudy Gobert got 5 first-round picks, Jaylen Brown gets 25.
Yeah.
Your draft for your next 30 years is just the Boston Celtics draft. I don't know. Until he retires, something like that. Like that's like it's not even a conversation for me. Like you pay him or you figure it out or stretch it out as long as you possibly can until you have the opportunity to pay him.
And like Grant Williams is someone who's like he's going to be a free agent as well. And like at the beginning of the year it's talked about, Grant could be earning 18 to 20 million, or that's what he wants to earn.
There's no way.
And it's like, now at this point, he's obviously had a few poor months, so he wouldn't be getting that amount. But it's like, if Jaylen Brown, and then you're like, there's not going to be any questions or, second thoughts of, oh, well, we don't want to sign Jaylen because we also have to pay Grant. It's like, no, Grant's gone.
Yeah.
Here is this supermax Jaylen Brown.
Yeah.
Like, because even if we get worse depth, I'd rather have the 2Js locked up and then just, bet on them being the best duo in the NBA, which they've proven to be this year, or at least up there, if you don't want to agree with that. I'd rather have those two guys under contract and take away some of the depth because it's still going to be your best chance to win an NBA championship, in my opinion. The last thing that I think goes into it is the transparency that he talked about wanting, about winning and just wanting everyone to be on the same page and speaking their mind. And I think when he says that and also says that the business can be cutthroat, I think it's difficult to trust what Brad Stevens and other guys in the organization are saying to you when all the rumors are going on. It's almost like impossible to be as transparent as you can be, because Brad still has to, like, Brad's job is to still take those phone calls about
exactly.
Yeah.
So especially if the other name on the other end of the line is Kevin Durant, like you have to take the phone call.
And like then Brad would, be looked at as doing his job poorly.
Exactly.
So Brad has to answer those calls, but he can, both things can be true, but I understand completely why Jaylen, might be a little skeptical on believing that. Or
what I think that really what they should have done, and what I think is the biggest criticism of it, is they should have, if you were just wanting to flirt around with the Durant thing, like if it wasn't like an actual, like, we should make this happen, let's do it. They should have come out day one, the first rumor came out, had a big ass press conference and made a big pomp and circumstance, and Brad should have up there. We're like, we're not trading Jaylen Brown. He is not, because people have done that. Like that is a thing that you could have done, and they didn't do that. And I feel like that's where he can be mad about this too. Like they might have told him to his face, but then he keeps seeing rumors about it over there. And listen, it could have all been from the Nets for all we know. Like it could have been the Nets just leaking shit just to ruin the Celtics from the inside. And not a bad theory. There's probably a lot of bad blood between those two organizations. Still don't think you would ever really want to do that with an organization you have to deal with every year and every day and just things like that. I'm not a particular fan of doing bad business just out of spite. But if they were doing that, sure. Like, yeah, I guess they could have been doing that. Or there was smoke to the fire and Jaylen's not a stupid guy and realized that there was smoke to the fire. And that's what I think is like, you just made the finals. You can't be like flirting around. I think that was the frustrating thing about it. Like, I get the wanting to do it. And if you're going to do it, fucking do it then. Trade for Kevin Durant, like make it happen. If you're not going to do it, then you have to hang up the phone on the Nets right away. Like, it's not like you can't get caught with those texts. Like, you know what I mean? It's like one of those scenarios. You are in this relationship with Jaylen deep. you are in deep. You can't get caught in like no fucking around. You can't call no DMs. Like, this is not that
Yeah,
time.
don't call. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, like
Yes.
there's a time. Yeah, like it's just like you can't be doing that shit. Like, you need to take care of your guy. And I feel like that's why he's upset.
Yeah, and I think Brad did that, but I think you're right. It just wasn't urgent enough. Like the urgency just wasn't there.
It was
like,
after
you're right.
a while. It was after
right, and maybe it didn't have to be a press conference, but like tell your guy right away. Like the fact that Jaylen had to set up a 3-way phone call with JT and Brad, it should have been Brad going to him in the locker room like the next day at practice and be like,
I imagine Jason had no idea what was going on. That's what I imagine. He's probably like,
and
"What's good, bro? How we doing?" And you're like, what?
Another point that Jaylen brought up that's so fair too is like Durant and Tatum are boys. Like this is obviously gonna make things like it was the specific player I think that got him this time.
They've both made it very clear too. Like they're brothers in a way, but they have their very different lives that they live. Like, apart from each other. I think that's fair for him to wonder in the off season too. Like they're not spending time together or doing anything really. Yeah. So who knows? That's how all these trades happen. Like he's not a dumb guy. Like he is using common sense in these scenarios. Like even if it's unfounded, he's like, his name keeps popping up. They're hanging out. You're not telling me shit. Like it's not hard to put the pieces together, especially when you're close to it.
Yeah, and we can wrap up the Jaylen stuff here, but I do the last few things I'll say is, well, the first off, the thing about him just being more than a basketball player and being more than an athlete, I thought was interesting to hear come from him, because like I literally think like this is gonna come off as corny, but like people, like you ask people close to me, like if I could pick anyone to be like in the world, just anyone, not athlete, just person, like I think I would take Jaylen Brown. Like I think Jaylen Brown is one of the coolest dudes on the planet. I remember him coming into the league and like learning that he went to Cal and he was like an unbelievable like piano player, and I just thought that was super interesting. Like he's crazy, like deep into the fashion game. He has his own clothing brand. Like he's the vice president of the Players Association for the NBA. Like he's super involved. So it's interesting to hear him voice something like that for someone who I feel like is received as much more than just an NBA
Jaylen
player.
Brown, I've thought that even before this, like I've thought for a long time, Jaylen Brown's going to end up being remembered by people more that for whatever he does after basketball than as the like Boston Celtic NBA champion, future, whatever that is, like will be like the underline to what he does. Cause that's the kind of guy he's always seen. Like, and then for him to like, that's what he wants. Like he clearly is thinking about these things, and it's awesome. Like you said, I echo everything you said. I've loved the guy since he came in, since learning about him in the draft that year and everything. And I just want whatever's best for him. Like that's what I got out of this article. I think it doesn't seem like he's in even a bad place. Like at this point, I think he just wants to be understood.
I'm literally wearing a Jaylen Brown Cal jersey for this episode.
That's lovely.
Like
it's a beautiful thing.
Jaylen's my guy, man. So yeah, it was. And then the last thing is, it was nice and refreshing. This is kind of the selfishness of the Celtics fans here. But after the game, he said to reporters, because obviously this was brought up, they kind of poked at it, honestly. They didn't really ask outright. But he was like, look, I think in written pieces, things can get taken out of context.
For sure.
He basically wanted to reiterate, like, I'm about winning. I want to be transparent with my organization and my teammates. Which I think he was. Like, he's just getting stuff off his chest. Like you said, this might not mean anything. This just might be Jaylen wanting to speak freely.
And
an opportunity to do it.
Logan, again, like the perfect guy to do this. Logan, somebody who's literally known Jaylen. They went to Cal at the same time. Logan covered him since Cal and just said, like, yeah, we kind of were friends. And that means, like, they're probably boys. Like, he's like like Jaylen's not doing that story, either of those stories, without someone that he implicitly trusts to, like, tell it what he wants to do. And that's the thing with Logan specifically, because that wasn't like the New York Times things was just like a Q&A like transcript, which was just like that's you're taking the interview, but this is a story. When you're trusting someone with like a feature story on you, you understand that they're going to do it delicately and with care. And I just think that that's like one of the dopest things about what he was able to do with this is like it was with somebody he was like been with since day one and got to tell his shit. And like I think people are going to be I think he made some more fans. I really do. Like maybe pissed off some Celtics fans. I don't know. You tell me, like, what Celtics Twitter has looked
people
like more
are,
than
and it's
anything.
toxic.
Sure.
But I mean, I just think I'm a little more tuned in than the casual Celtics fan, and I feel like I've gone through the ups and downs of the rumors. And I just believe what Jason or what Jaylen's telling to people.
Yeah.
So I'm taking his word that he's just getting stuff off his chest. He wants the organization to be transparent. I think that's totally fair. He probably wants the trade rumors to stop. I think that's totally fair if there is, and if any part of it's coming from the Celtics side. And he just wants to win, which that's what all the Celtics fans should want. So, and he's crushing it. Like he's literally averaging, like his numbers are absurd on that road trip that they just came off of. The 6-game road trip, he's shooting 44% from three, averaging over 30 points per game. He's still got a steal in
like
there.
The article, this is the beauty of it, is that he says, like you mentioned, the back door, like the biggest thing that touched me is like and where I'm from, you walk through the front door, you show respect, like you said, and then he's talking about going to the back door, the corporate circles and everything. And then he kind of just does the whole corporate circle thing in this whole article towards the Celtics. He's like, this is how I do it. But if you're not going to do it with me like that, like that's literally what the story is. It's like, this is how I do. This is how I've always done business. This is what's happened to me. So now here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to throw this little nuggets in. Like, I'm happy with the Celtics, but Wes is the present. But like all that shit, that wasn't directed towards Celtics fans. Like that, if he there's other ways to do that if he really wanted to be out. Like if he really wanted to be out, there would have been a trade request. That is directed at Wick Grossbeck. That's one man. It's Wick. It's not Brad. It's nobody else. We know who is directed at. And I think that is, I can say that from the outside perspective to all the other crazy Celtics fans that are going off today, which I'm very used to as a Bills fan. Trust me, this offseason has been one of the worst I've ever experienced. That's the biggest thing I can think of is he is trying to make your organization better, and you want your players to do that, to care enough to do that.
Right. Yeah, I mean, unless it ends up being Jaylen super unhappy and something, we have like a first-round exit in the playoffs, I don't think there's any reason why Jaylen doesn't get a max or the contract he's looking for, and he returns and, they try to run it back with this similar core. And I just think that's what I should believe right now, and I think that's the most likely outcome unless, something unforeseen happens. But let's end the show here with our MVP rankings. The Jaylen stuff's interesting. We'll see how that pans out, but the MVP stuff is more interesting and a little bit crazy this time of year because it looked like Jokic was running away with it for a while, and now we have a bit of a fight at the end of the season, I think. And it's actually, it might be for the best that Steve's missing this show because he would still be fighting for Jokic. But let's throw up.
To. This is all Meerkat's doing. Don't Steve.
He's in his ear.
Steve is compromised, and that's okay. Like, because I love you, Meer. This is no hate, but I just know Steve is compromised, and I just have to take that into account now. That's all I'm saying.
So if you are just listening, we're throwing up our graphic right now. And if you're watching, you will see this. The Happy Hour Hoops MVP ladder. We have Joel Embiid number 1 right now.
Woo!
Nikola Jokic, the Joker, number 2. Giannis Antetokounmpo, number 3. Jason Tatum, number 4. Domantas Sabonis, who I was so excited to put in here at the 5th rank of the MVP ladder, and then honorable mentions, your guy Donovan Mitchell and Jalen Brunson, which I loved. He has to. Yeah, he's been playing outstanding, and there's not really too many guys that are having as much of a positive impact towards winning.
There's one guy. And I think it's the argument that I want to make with you is I think De'Aaron Fox should be the MVP candidate, not Sabonis. I truly do.
Okay.
I think it's the clutch rating. Like he's scoring enough to be in consideration if they really wanted to. He's scoring like 30 a game. And you can give Domantas the credit because, I mean, obviously Fox was not this guy until Sabonis showed up. Let's be honest, right? So and Sabonis has been awesome. Like he's been Jokic level, no, maybe a little less, but he's been Jokic level impact of everything offensively that he's doing. But the clutch numbers for Fox are just insane, dude. Like he's like whatever we call Michael Jordan, Fox has been doing this year. It's like 80% shoot free or field goal percentage or something like that in the clutch. Like he's just a monster. So I feel like with those numbers, a 2 seed, a guard, and a guy who has all these highlights and game tying shots, game winning shots, clutch points, all that shit, I would throw Fox in there, but I love Sabonis, and I couldn't be mad at that either because he has just been so joyous to watch. And I don't know if one can really function without the other, honestly.
Yeah, I think my thing for having Sabonis over Fox is probably just because the turnaround that this franchise saw pretty much shortly after Sabonis walked through the door. And obviously, that is going to improve Fox's game. And that's not really fair to Fox because he hasn't had much of a team around him until this year with Sabonis. True. So it's kind of like you could take your pick. It's funny. We could probably have like a slash and then just have both of them as the 5th rank on the MVP ladder. But we don't have Steve here, but are you good with the Joel Embiid as number one right now?
It's done for me. If I was like, and I shouldn't say that because there's 12 games left, whatever, but like what he's done to get the Sixers back into the contention they're in, like realistically a contender for the 1 seed, like fighting back and forth now with your Celtics there for the 2 seed. Like we were penciling them in for the 3, battling with the Cavs for the 4, like right after the All-Star break, right before. He has been awesome. And he's been awesome all year. I think it's been neck and neck, and everybody wanted to give it to Jokic because of the standings and everything else we were talking about. Well, now Embiid he's got them up within striking distance. I think he's been dominant. So has Jokic. I think it's going to go against him, though, because of the 3 year. If it's even, I think it goes to Embiid just because of they're not going to give it to Jokic 3 years in a row if it's even. I think Embiid is just as deserving. I wouldn't be mad if Jokic wins again, but I don't think you can sit here and say, like, if you're a Jokic defender, that there's no reason that Embiid should win over him because that's just a lie, in my opinion. Yeah. I think you would say the same with Giannis, honestly, if you wanted to. I wouldn't be mad at Giannis either.
Right. Yeah, no, I feel the same way. And my thing for Embiid is I think pound for pound, like Embiid just can do more than Jokic can. Obviously, I think Jokic makes his teammates better. I think he makes his team better. And he's probably better, he's probably better with the usage rate compared to Joel Embiid.
Embiid's defensive impacts compared to Jokic's is not even comparable. It's not even comparable. Not even comparable.
And the thing I feel like people were running away with, and the reason why they wanted Jokic to run away with the MVP halfway through the season is because of the standings, which you mentioned. But let's look right now. The 76ers have the same amount of wins and 1 less loss.
Yeah.
It's like you can't even use that for the Jokic argument anymore. And this isn't, me a chance to hate on Jokic. It's just it's annoying how we almost do this every year. We pick one person,
someone with 20 games left, or like that person has to win MVP.
And it's like, no, we get it. Of course, he's doing stuff we haven't seen before, and I get why people want to jump on that. But Joel Embiid's doing stuff we haven't seen before, and he hasn't even gotten any of the hardware yet. And he's been doing it at the same pace as Jokic. Every time they match up, Embiid has his number and has his way. I think it has to be Joel.
It's just time, yeah. It just is. And I just feels like he deserves it. He feels like he's been playing at the same level, at the very least, if not better. And it's just a guy like. This is how these awards work. Like he should be rewarded this year. He has not dropped off at all. He's just gotten better over the last 3 years with this battle with Jokic. Like this era is going to be defined by these two, at least these 3 years right now, and Giannis obviously as well. But like those are the names we're going to be talking about. And Joel, like he deserves to be mentioned alongside those guys from the last 5 years. He really does.
Yeah, man. I think it's JoJo's time. And like I guess Giannis still has a chance. We had him 3 on the list. I don't, the Kings guys are fun to put on there. I don't think they have a chance.
See how many votes they get. That's the most interesting thing with them,
And Tatum, I don't think has a shot at it. I think
fell off a little bit, yeah.
Yeah, they have 9 games left. If he were to have like 2 60-point games during those nine games, obviously, I think
if they went like 9-0, 8-1, he averages like 34, and they get the 1 seed. That could be a good case for sure.
Yes, I agree with that. But with all that said, I think we're gonna wrap it up here.
What's your final 4 pick? Now that we've all settled here, my national championship is now gone. Our Happy Hour Hoops national champion is still alive, though. The Texas Longhorns. But what are you feeling?
Final 4.
Are you still alive? Is your Final 4 still alive?
I think I made too many brackets this year.
That's fair. See, I did. This is the first year I've ever done this, Dunny. I did 1 bracket, and I did it the same one for everything. I usually just do a bunch of random ones.
Yeah.
I just did 1 this year. I think my Final 4 now is Houston and Texas on the one side, the boring. Or no, they're in the same region. My bad. It's Texas and UCLA still on my one side. That's all clean. I had Marquette, so I'm out on Marquette. I don't know, man. I think I'm just gonna go Michigan State just because it's fucking Tom Izzo at this point and
Mr. March.
Yeah, and I had Creighton instead of Bama, and I think I'm gonna stay with it. I'm gonna stay with Creighton. So I got Creighton, Michigan State, Bama, and then UCLA, Texas.
I'm pretty sure I have in at least one of my brackets. I still have all my 4. I have Bama. Actually, who do I have from the? No, because I had Kentucky from the East, I think. So I think right now, if I had to do it, it would be Alabama, Kansas State, Texas, and UCLA.
All right. Well, we'll see what happens. We'll see what Steve says. I'm sure he's like, I don't know. I'm kind of Steve's I think avoiding us just because I was gonna roast him about not letting us pick Princeton, and then they're in the Sweet 16.
Man, it's crazy that it's already been that long since then. But yeah, man, Princeton. I would love to see them win another game.
I mean, Princeton won me a lot of money this weekend. I can't lie. You texted me and I was like, "Fuck, dude. I guess I have to do this at this point." Plus 800 odds, roll something on there, and you're off. It was a good day. I never felt uncomfortable either. I felt good the whole time.
Those Ivy League boys, man, they know how to fight.
Jesus Christ, dude, this is crazy.
All right, that'll be it, folks, for Happy Hour Hoops. For Jake, for myself, follow Trainwreck Sports. Follow us on Twitter, Happy Hour Hoops, or all socials for that matter. Happy Hour Hoops 1 on all platforms. If you're listening, go to YouTube, subscribe, give us a like, all that good stuff. Enjoy the rest of your March and enjoy the NBA playoffs that are coming up so shortly. And have a good one, folks.
Peace.
Later, guys.